If we could have people take your seats and get everyone to sit down. Hate to break up nice conversations, but hopefully we'll have a little time afterwards if we go ahead and get started. Oh. Okay. All right. So we'll give you just a minute or so to just get settled and situated, and then we'll get started. Oh. Okay. Can y'all hear me okay? All right, great. My name's Laurie Gilman. I'm the owner of City Bookshop, and I'm very happy to welcome you here tonight, and especially happy to be welcoming you into this particular space tonight, given that we weren't really sure about this a couple weeks ago. So that's all good. For those of you who might not know, we had a flood. We had to shut everything down, and it was like we were closed for 5 weeks. So we're here. Yay. Just before we get to the main event here, just a couple of little housekeeping items. First of all, thank you for coming out. Second, if you pre-ordered your book when you got your ticket, it is at the info desk right over here, and you can just pick it up there. If you want to purchase a book, the purchases are made upstairs. You can go upstairs and come back down to get your book signed or have snacks or what have you. And we do have virtual attendees tonight as well. And so hello, virtual attendees. And if you have questions, please put those in the Q&A, and we have someone here who can read them for our panelists. Okay, I think that is all the housekeeping. So on to the main event. We're really happy to have you here to celebrate the publication of Teresa Spencer's book, Too Like the Lightning, Prose Poems to My Almost Loves. Before we actually get to the main event, though, I just want to give you a little bit of background about everybody here. Sorry, I'm blocking people. And my connection personally, first of all, Taffety Punk is the resident theater company at the Capitol Hill Arts Workshop. Yay! It was founded to establish an actively collaborative company of actors, dancers, and musicians. The company has been at the forefront of theater innovation, presenting groundbreaking productions that inspire audiences from the classical to the very modern. They celebrate opportunities to introduce new playwrights and stories to the stage, new works of choreography, new compositions of original music, and more. So, in short, they offer great professional theater at extremely affordable prices. So, if you haven't taken advantage, do that. They are the company in residence at the Capitol Hill Arts Workshop, which is a community arts organization that provides all kinds of art experiences for kids and adults, including after-school arts programming, visual arts classes, private music lessons, and more. And I have a long history with the Capitol Hill Arts Workshop. I see some people from there here tonight as well. And I've always loved having this kind of amazing art school right here in our neighborhood available to just anyone who's interested. We feel very lucky here at the bookstore to have both of these organizations as our neighbors. And they're very important to me personally, as I said, which makes this my favorite kind of evening here at the bookstore, where all these different parts of my life and things that are important to me and things that, in my opinion, make life worthwhile come together in the bookstore. So thank you all for being a part of that. All right, officially now, Teresa Spencer writes and makes theater in Baltimore. She is a company member with Taffety Punk Theatre Company and teaches acting at Towson University. We also have joining, Teresa is here. We have, we also have joining Teresa, Lise Bruneau, who will be reading with her. Lise is an actor and a director with a very, very long resume, and we would be here for a long time if I went through that. But I also want to just, on the theme of the neighborhood part, Lisa's partner and where's Percy? Percy's here? Yeah. Oh, I didn't even recognize you, Percy. All right. Full disclosure, my daughter, when she was like 15, babysat Percy when he was really little. And I get to see Lise every week this summer because we're in the CSA and she volunteers with the CSA and it's right on my block. So again, the neighborhood thing. I love it. We also have tonight Dr. Michaela Frischhertz, and she is an associate professor at Towson University in the Department of Communication Studies. She particularly studies how women and other historically disenfranchised genders express pleasure in public. And she will be moderating and providing, sorry, there you are, and providing a little more background and commentary for this evening. Join me in welcoming these three people who are going to read for us that I can't keep track of where they are. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. Oh, do I need this? Should I even talk into that? I can just do this. You have to turn it on. Oh, we can talk for the online.
Check, check, what?
Here, hello.
Check, check, one. How we doing? Oh, that's dulcet. A little bit of.
We can press this one button.
Is that one happy?
Yeah.
Oh. No. This is our clown show.
Check, check, one. Oh, that's good. Oh, that'll do. Cheers, y'all. Welcome. Did you all get a cupcake? Yeah. Did you get a Mad Lib? You get to do your own prose poem to cat collars. So by all means, they're in the back. Feel free to get up and go get some rosé as we're going. I do want to say before we launch, I really want to say thank you to Taffety Punk Theatre Company. Yeah. As you heard, they make all kinds of awesome things, and now they publish books, which is super exciting. Yeah, well, I also really want to shout out and say thank you. There's an illustrator for this book. Yeah. Sydney Schwent is also an actor and a fight choreographer. So that's who you want on your team when you're smashing the patriarchy. And drew some fantastic pictures that made this just a whole lot cuter. And so this is Too Like the Lightning. This is a collection of prose poems, love poems to street harassers, cat callers, online trolls. Basically, what I'm saying to you is that this evening is going to be a hoot. But all of the poems are based on true stories that happened to actual people who were kind and brave enough to share those stories with me, and then I turned them into jokes. So I do want to just say a huge thank you to the women and genderqueer people who shared these stories with me, because they make the spine of the book. That was an off-the-cuff pun, by the way. All right. Let's ride. To the Trucker. A prose poem to the trucker who blasts his air horn at women as he passes on the right, making them startle and twist round and wonder, are my brights on? No. It's a blue mid-morning, and I'm pretty sure I see your fingers waggling suggestively in the rear view as you pull away, leaving me with only a memory, a hairy patch of elbow jutting from the driver's side window, a whisper of exhaust. Our connection, so fleeting. Your come on, so appealing. What is your number? How do I date you? I see you sanding the wooden rungs of our children's treehouse ladder, driving me in the cab of your big rig to my colonoscopies, holding my paper-thin wrist in your flat, chappy palm as I slip, cherished, beloved, from this world. Another love lost to the dotted yellow line disappearing over the horizon. So the trucker started this collection. It was a little ditty that actually happened to me as I was driving along Route 50 and heard this air horn and was completely startled and frightened. And then I thought, that didn't really feel like a compliment. But let me follow that weird street harasser's logic to its logical conclusion. What if that was his kind of ham-fisted way of starting a conversation with me? Like, what if we actually got to know each other? And so I imagined our future together, and I wrote him a love poem, and then I put it on the internet. And y'all, it has really blown me away how this ballooned and spiraled, because it spoke to people, because this is a thing that happens all the time. And so I started getting stories from people would just DM me and be like, wow, that poem reminded me of this thing that happened. And then I'd have to write another poem and another. And then pretty soon, Taffety Punk Theatre Company said, this is funny and it means something to people. So let's make a book of it. Want to hear some more?
To the Shouter, a prose poem to the street harasser who just turns up the volume. How you doing tonight? You asked me, sotto voce. And then again, still in dulcet tones, but with rising fervor, how you doing tonight? And then finally a third time, your throaty baritone ricocheting off the night air. How you doing tonight? I like that you understand passion and volume to be equivalent. You're obviously a subtle man, delicate in sensibilities, refined in delivery. Might you and I continue the conversation? Let's scream sweet nothings right into each other's faces. I want to roll over in the morning to discover your warm body swathed in a tangle of bed sheets and dappled sunlight and shout, "Good morning, lover!" into your tender eardrum. I want to grow old with you, accumulating noise complaints and early onset hearing loss. Someday when we are frail and gray, my love for you will rest gently in the simple exchanges between us. Baby, it's your brother on the phone. No, I know your mother's dead. It's your brother. Just pick up the phone. God, I'd burn for you.
To the Parking Helper. A prose poem to the gentleman who stops to offer women unsolicited parallel parking instructions. I first glimpsed you on the sidewalk as I angled my car backward into a smallish but not impossible spot on 7th Street. In my periphery, a flash of motion. Our eyes met. You held your fists in perfect isolation, giving me to understand that you were gripping an invisible steering wheel. Turn the wheel right, you mouthed, and your hands danced along to illustrate. I don't think you know how adorable you look, standing there on the sidewalk gesticulating. I want to smush your ruddy, helpful cheeks, just smush them. and tousle your graying, competent hair. What would I have done without your authority on this subject? What will I do wrong next without your guidance? Be my life partner. Sail with me on this voyage as my sweet, mute semaphorist, capably signaling me through all of life's narrow passages.
Juliet says to her Romeo, I have no joy of this contract tonight. It is too rash, too unadvised, too sudden, too like the lightning, which doth cease to be ere one can say it lightens. That's exactly how things are between dudes on the street and women who are just trying to get from place to place. They're these tragic little ephemeral trysts, too brief, too fleeting, too like the lightning. So, hence the title of this collection, Too Like the Lightning, Prose Poems to My Almost Loves. A nursery rhyme for girls online. 1 and 2, veiny and blue. 2 and 3, knobby like knees. 3 and 4, here's some more. 4 and 5, is that hives? 5 and 6, dick pics. Nothing but dick pics. The cell phone pings, and this one's got a ring. 9 and 10, some of them bend. 15, 16, non-consensual sexting. 37, 38, shaft and taint. 49, 50, nifty. We're drowning in stiffies. Loose and freckled, short and wrinkled, thick and hairy. This one's just scary. Why did no one tell us? We're in a phallus palace. We hoped you'd play nice. Now we're paying the price. Every time we log on, schlongs. A whole lot of schlongs.
Lisa's decades of classical training really lends a rhythm to that.
I'm sure that's not how it sounded in your head.
You elevated it. To the gender studies majors. A prose poem to a car full of fragile masculinity. Maleness and femaleness are, of course, a complex convergence of biology and mores, DNA expression and social expression. Who is to tell us what makes a woman and what makes a man? Plato's Symposium? The Kinsey Institute? RuPaul's Drag Race? The North Carolina General Assembly? Or perhaps the question is best left to you. 4 bros cruising campus at night. As I walked home after dark, you pulled up alongside me and let loose the standard guy-on-girl litany. The whistles, the hoots, the hey babies. Gender exists on a slip and slide of a continuum, but that night, you were so very firmly on the male side, the puff and bluster side, the look at us mightily swinging our giant dicks side. And how badly you wanted me to know my place in relation to yours. So it was a bit perplexing when, in response to my silence, you revved the engine and peeled away, tossing a final rejoinder out the window into your wake. You look like a man, bitch. In a single sentence, you brought our culture's deepest discomforts into sharp relief. I could dissect that one sentence for 1,000 poems and never come out the other side. One moment, my femininity attracts your attention. The next, you rebuke me for masculinity. I was brazen enough to be a woman in public, so you shame me for mannishness? Not to mention, of course, the paralyzing cognitive dissonance of those two opposing epithets in one breath. Man, bitch. And further still, the self-incriminating homophobia of four bros caught catcalling a girl who, in their own estimation, looks like a man. We could fall into the rabbit hole of that one sentence. You look like a man, bitch, for an eternity. In fact, a decade later, I am still falling, just me and you, a car full of fragility, tumbling, plummeting, frozen forever in perpetual free fall through the abyss.
To the Follower Home, a prose poem to the dude who followed me home in Los Feliz. I remember the clicking of our footsteps in the gloaming, so perfectly in sync. I sped up, I slowed down, and you matched my pace until I hardly knew where I ended and you began. And then, when I paused at the front door, so did you. There were universes in that brief hiccup of silence. God, how I wanted to tumble into the bottomless sea of your eyes. But when I turned to find you, I saw only your knees peeking out from your crouch behind the hedge. Why so shy? I know there can only be one reason for your coy game of follow the leader. You are a magnificent lover. So why hide it? Honey, don't be coquettish. You know you're not being fair, out here on the street hawking a bill of goods you don't mean to deliver. Come on out from behind that hedge, you bashful little minx. Let me push you inside the foyer. Let me press you tenderly against the bank of silver corrugated mailboxes. Let me give you what you're asking for.
So in addition to the prose poems, there are also some longer pieces in the collection. There's some short stories. There's even a short play. Yeah, this one is a online customer review. And I will remind you, these are all based on true stories. Trampwise.com. Maison Plage et Soleil. 3.5 out of 5 stars. Terrific cake. Hold the assault. If there's one thing the team at Maison Plage et Soleil gets right, it's personal attention. I felt cared for from the moment my tour group arrived. As soon as we stepped into the lobby, I could feel the concierge's eyes following my every move, even when my back was turned. I didn't even have to call down for room service. He appeared at my door pronto with hot jasmine tea and those unblinking eyes. Actually, I would have preferred if he waited for a call. I was just about to shower and I don't really drink tea, so it was awkward. But it's the thought that counts. And he had such stick-to-itiveness. He insisted on laying this tea service for me, which really was going above and beyond because it meant coming all the way into the room and steering the cart into a very narrow cranny between the bed and the balcony doors. I have to admit that's one thing the Maison Plage and Soleil falls short on: decor. A king-sized canopy bed that takes up most of the room? Methinks the hotel designer doth protest too much. And that reminds me, I will warn future guests that these fin de siècle buildings aren't well equipped with means of egress. There's no fire escape off the balcony, but you gotta hand it to them for those adorable ivy-clad trellises. I wish the door to the room weren't in a corner, too. One warm body in the doorway and Bob's your uncle. Guess you're a shut-in for the evening. Anyway, that tea service was cute. Tiny roses painted around the spout, but P.U. jasmine is a strong scent in a little room, especially when you weren't expecting it. Things got a little dicey around tipping protocols, you know, strange girl, foreign land and all. I offered a few coins, but I think the malentendu arose from the concierge's impression that I owed him. Something about enticing him since I arrived. Not sure what that was about. Maybe I dropped the ball on some customary exchange around our check-in. Maybe bag service? Yikes, talk about a gaffe. That's when he blocked the door and grabbed my ass, which made me think I must really not understand the bartering system. I considered a quick swing down the trellises, but honestly, my tourism style is more kick back and relax than dive in head first, so I opted instead for a sprint through the corridors. Flush carpets! crown molding. But watch out for that fin de siècle narrowness and tricky stairway to nowhere design. I gotta say, the whole labyrinth thing feels a little forced. By the time I got to the front desk, there he was. So reassuring to know the employees know the ins and outs of this place, like the workings of one of those intricate pocket watches with all the gears and valves this city is so famous for. It's almost scary how quickly he moved. Talk about at the ready. But just my luck. That no man left behind attentiveness extends to the whole staff, because there was the hotelier at my elbow and at my service. I told him about our little mix-up, and that's when I saw the Maison Plage and Soleil's true colors. This is a never-give-up establishment, travelers. Boy, was he determined to make things right. Tickety-boo, before I knew it, I was wedged between that same concierge and the hotelier in a charmingly miniature alcove. And the hotelier was demanding the concierge deliver me a personal apology. How debonair. Future guests, if I have one suggestion for the Maison Plage and Soleil, and really it's only a small thing, it's that they add some lighting in that alcove. Just a titch. Anyway, from there, I thought the whole Lost in Translation episode was surely behind us, and all that was ahead was that promised beach and sun. But I was in for another surprise. That sweet hotelier, well, he really outdid himself in the old sorry about my employees whoopsie-daisy department. The last thing I expected was a party, but that's the first thing I got. Imagine my surprise when that evening I found myself surrounded by all of the hotel's employees, minus, interestingly, the concierge, maybe he takes the day shift, and my entire tour group, a little bleary-eyed and worse for wear, maybe due to the Byzantine police reporting and witness statement process in what is for most of us a second language. But the hotelier correctly sniffed out that we were all due for a break in the excitement, and he sure did deliver. That's when the topper came, fellow travelers. You'll never guess what that nice hotelier had in store for us all. He baked me a cake himself. Strawberry, my favorite. The icing on the cake was, well, it was the literal icing on the cake. I think the message that the hotelier spelled out in pink buttercream script sums up my time at Maison Plage and Soleil perfectly in one simple word: welcome. TLDR, a few hiccups during my stay, but I'm putting this down for 3.5 stars. Would recommend for the cake and personal service. Would be 4 if they put up a nice sconce in that alcove. I hope you all got a complimentary strawberry cupcake.
All right, a little bit of an issue between Teresa and I here, because this is the most excellent pickup line that I have ever personally heard in my life. Teresa is welcome to disagree, but like, I think this one's a winner. To the creative catcaller, a prose poem to the man on H Street who told me my booty looked like it got something to say. It does. My booty has so much to say, mainly that it longs to become conversant in the language of yours. What tender lover's symphony might we together compose? I'll fart like distant clapping, you like a rising snare roll. Trumpets naturally come to mind, but also bass oboe. A soupçon of timpani, low, mournful farts more ache than sound, quiet, whispered farts peeping demurely from under the duvet, insistent, honking farts like when you're trying to feed the ducks and you accidentally stir up a gaggle of aggressive geese, the kind of plaintive, mewling farts that make farmhands look up from their bales and ask if the cat has finally delivered her kittens in the barn. Propulsive farts, sharts, my booty look like it got something to say. So much, sweet lover. And it's all for you.
I do have to say there was poetry in that cat call. And he's never gonna know what beautiful music we made together. But I do thank him. I thank him. And thank you all so much for indulging us with our dick and fart jokes. I'm going to hand it off on that note. I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Michaela Frischhertz, who, oh, does yours work?
Maybe.
Check,
Does it work?
check.
Check. We're working. We're working. Great. All right. So I'm super delighted to be here in celebration of this book release. My name is Michaela Frischhertz. I am a colleague of Teresa's at Towson University. And harassment against the backdrop of long-standing violent patriarchal structures that women and other historically disenfranchised genders have had to grapple with since the beginning of time. I couldn't help but wonder, as I got the great privilege of reading an advanced copy of the book, of a pretty seminal moment in feminist discourse that emerged in about the 1980s. There was this conference at Barnard College called Towards a Politics of Sexuality. And at that conference, lots of folks came to the table to discuss what the place of sex, sexuality, pleasure, desire is for women and in the feminist movement and towards a politics of liberation. And after that conference, Carol Vance wrote this collection that captured the conversations that were there. And in the introduction to that collection, she wrote, "To only focus on pleasure and gratification ignores the patriarchal structure in which women act. Yet to speak only of sexual violence and oppression ignores women's experience with sexual agency and choice, and unwittingly increases the sexual terror and despair in which women live." So I'm elated to be here to celebrate the release of Two Like Lightning tonight, because this is a project that accomplishes living in these productive middle ranges between the traffic of pleasure and danger. In the foreword of Two Like the Lightning, Teresa writes, "The point for harassers is to put women in their place in public. Harassment makes us feel small. And so what does it mean to imagine taking up all the space that aliveness asks us to fill? The space of eros and sweet crushes and lingering kisses, expansiveness, showing up in our fullness, like Teresa writes. With sharp tongues in cheeks, these love letters, these love poems accomplish precisely this. Just this morning, I was listening to one of the most brilliant among us, Esther Perel, I don't know if anybody's familiar, who was talking about how she understands the concept of the erotic. And for her, much like Audre Lorde, the erotic describes a sense of aliveness, of vibrancy. Erotic not as just getting your jollies off, not just as the sexual, but as eros, a life force, as energy. And so I'm so grateful that the world gets to hold Two Like the Lightning, another access point for this energy. And I want to open the floor for questions and discussion and provocations and mysteries, and invite folks to join the conversation, starting with, I think, a big overarching question, which is about the use of humor in this project. And so I'm wondering if you might talk a little bit about the place of humor and lightness, sharp tongues and cheeks in the project, given the violently intense exigence against which this project writes.
Yeah. I love that definition of eros, bringing in the idea of energy, because I'm an actor primarily, and the actor's palette is vibrational energy in the air between us. And so, you know, we work very hard in whatever we build in the theater to create tension in that vibrational energy and then to release it together collaboratively. So I think that's kind of the idea behind the book too, is that, I mean, these moments in public, whatever the public space may be, are kind of these moments that they create a kind of separation of self, where it's like, you know, you're walking down the street, you're just doing your own thing, you're thinking about your to-do list or whatever, you are you. And then all of a sudden somebody makes you aware of your sexual self and makes you aware of that as being the most valuable thing about you, the most pertinent thing about you. And then it's all of a sudden, it's like, there's a split. It's like, okay, here's me, who I thought was me, and then here's who I realize is me to the world. and that kind of dissonance, there's a tension there, right? There's an energetic like, yikes. And you know, theater people like catharsis. We like to let go of the yikes with a laugh, right? But also like it is so disingenuous to harass people in public, right? Like that's just a dick move, but also a clown move. And I really like clowns, by the way, so I don't mean to use that in a derogatory sense, but there is a kind of performative clownishness in saying, oh, it was just a compliment. And so I really like just calling that to account and going, no, it wasn't, and you know it wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that piece of it. And you mentioned that in the foreword too, where you say actually the research indicates that most harassers do it under the cover of darkness when there's not a lot of folks around, right? Where there is no being perceived of the bad behavior in the first place. And what happens when it happens in front of other folks? Are folks empowered to say something in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, can I say something?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So one of my favorite catcalling moments was I was walking behind a couple of men in London, and they were like just ripping into this woman that was walking ahead of them. Woo, yeah. And so I was like, hey, what are you saying? Shut up. And they looked and they were scared and they were ashamed and they ran away. They were behind her, so they had the power, and I was behind them, so I had the power. It was just shocking how quickly it turned.
Great.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'd love to open the floor to some questions, and I'll be sure to repeat the question in the microphone for our virtual audience.
Follow up on that thing you were leading us into about humor,
Mhm.
because the hotel review, I had a harder time with the humor in that,
Mhm.
and I'm reluctant to say that verbal assault is less traumatizing or less inappropriate than physical assault, but I'm aware of having had that reaction when I listened to it, that if someone shouts at you and drives on, your comedy sort of recharacterizes the space that was left by them. But the idea of someone touching someone against their will, I found as a listener that I could not join you in laughing about that. That I need more time to be angry for you. And so the humor sort of hits differently. So what the offense was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hear the question being about sort of degrees of assault and violence, and what happens when we're called to laugh about it if we haven't totally processed the violence in the first place in our own bodies, and how that shows up for you in the collection.
Yeah, you said it so beautifully. I kind of just want to say 100%. Yeah. That what happened in the room as we were reading is that's not an accident, that we are kind of writing this space because street harassment and online harassment as well, they all exist on the same spectrum as sexual violence. It's all the same thing. And so, yeah, this is really about situating those things on that spectrum and skirting on that line. And sometimes it's not funny, right? We are turning the mirror on the perpetrator and saying, take a look at yourself, and seeking to make him the butt of the joke, right? But sometimes it's not a ha-ha catharsis. It's a we just got to tell the story catharsis, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I love that.
Other questions? Yeah, please.
So, as somebody who's deep in DC online dating trenches with Teresa once upon a time, I remember when this project first started and how there was so much pressure in the world to be part of, to pair up. You don't want to be alone. You don't want to do this. And yet for women, this is submitting yourself to this treatment over and over again. And so did this project help you pace the unending sort of annoyance and frustration and fear of putting yourself out there again and again.
Yeah, so I hear the question to be one about how does the project equip you with maybe the personal skills to navigate a violent and patriarchal world, and maybe even like the cultural skills, right? To do a culture shift too. Like, what's the place of the project there as well on an individual, but also on a more societal level?
Yeah, so I've been doing this for kind of a while. We're like coming up on a decade that I've been writing these little guys. And a strange phenomenon has emerged for me, which is that now when I get catcalled, I frequently go, "Oh, that's a good one." And in fact, as I was walking here tonight, I got catcalled. Yes, I know. Oops, did I still? All he said was hi, but it was a suggestive hi. He like pulled up on his scooter and I have a bag of wine and cupcakes and he was like, hi. And then the light changed and he drove away. So like, that's not you trying to start a conversation, brah. Anyway. but then there's this little thing in me that goes, oh, that's a great story, which yeah, totally, Sarah, that I think that telling the story and calling out the what's going on for what it actually is, rather than the disingenuous lie, it makes it more survivable, man, for sure. Yeah. And I think that's why, I mean, I'm so grateful to all of the tremendous courage it takes to share stories and anonymously know that, a dick joke might emerge from it. But yeah, I'm super yeah, I'm just super grateful for that kind of leap of faith, and also for the community that this has kind of built. It is about building solidarity, because this is as I've learned over the course of this project that is lengthening, this is like a ubiquitous thing in the lives of women and people whose gender expression is routinely marginalized. And yet a lot of dudes don't know anything about it and are completely shocked because it is designed to be covert and hidden. So I think a big part of this project is let's build some solidarity and let's also build some awareness for the good dudes.
Yeah, please.
If you hear, oh, that was a good cat call, you like have to ask their permission.
Yeah, so the question is, what's the IRB protocol for using street harassment as part of the project?
They didn't ask my permission. No, but it's public space, right? And I think that that's part of the disingenuousness of it. Is there's this idea of like, you don't get to be in public. I get to call you out in public, but what I'm doing is my own little secret thing, and it's not. You did it in public, so now I get to put it on the internet and in a book.
How do you think women, or do you think women perpetuate this kind of exchange in some way? And if you do, how can that be changed? Besides your book, but if you have any thoughts on that.
So the question is, how do women perpetuate these flows of power if they do?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. Or when they do, or if they do.
Yeah, that's a really great question, because I do think that this lives in a kind of covert space where we frequently don't recognize it as violence, even if it has happened to us. And I actually have had some responses from women of like, oh, that should make you feel good. They noticed you. Yeah, and I don't agree. Yeah, and it's also just my philosophical perspective that if there is a target and a perpetrator, his choices and his actions are always his choices, and that there's really nothing that a target can do to create a perpetrator's choices. That's just not a thing, But in the public discourse, we talk like it's a thing, right? And I mean, the Me Too movement exposed this. We talk like, well, what did she do? to invite it. What was she wearing? Yeah. Um, right. Yeah. How much are they paying her? Exactly $0. Um, but loss of life, freedom, all of that is what it caused her to come forward. So yeah, I think that really what I'm trying to do here is take that focus, that sort of like split consciousness that harassment creates, and go, bam, why don't you have a little split consciousness about yourself, right? Those are your choices to the perpetrator.
I think that's also such a wonderful confrontation of how so much of this is systemic and structural
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I think the work of Adrienne Marie Brown is really instructive here too, thinking about her work on pleasure activism, where she says we're just repeatedly conditioned. And in that conditioning, we don't all have the same choices to choose. And so what happens in that moment of catcalling when we're shut down and you're like, wait a minute, what's happening here? And then it isn't until 13 hours later where you're like, dang it, that's what I should have said. Because the conditioning isn't there, the structure isn't so. And so how do we revision the structure? And I think this project is part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Last question.
Audience, you said that part of it is written as a voice for solidarity and to continue that conversation, and that part of it is for the good guys who will understand the humor. Is there any part of you that also hopes that perpetrators might be moved or struck by a humorous approach rather than a punching of rope?
Yeah, so I hear the question being one about audience and what the vision is for perpetrators who might encounter the reverberations of the project.
That's such a great question. And, not one that I thought about too much, because I just kind of didn't think that a Shakespeare actor's prose poems to pervs would really land in their hands. But boy, howdy, would I love for a habitual catcaller to read this book. I think that would be frickin' great. Not because I think it would change his ways, honestly. That's a stubborn guy. That's a guy entrenched in his views about gender. But for him to go, oh shoot, they know. That's nice. That would make me happy. So, if you have any troll friends, give them this book.
Okay, I'm sorry to have to end the event, but it is getting on to ending time. Thank you again for coming out. And I think I didn't say anything about Macbeth, did I, before? Okay. I want to just mention that you can see both Teresa and Lise in the Riot Girls production of Macbeth, which will be opening at Chaw on September 25th. The 1st. Okay. Yes. So that is something you'll want to get your tickets to. With that, we will have a signing line. Just give us a moment if you could fold your chairs up and lean them against one of the shelves. And we'll set up a table real quick right here, and you can get your book signed, have some more strawberry frosted cupcakes and wine if there's wine still. And thank you again for coming.
I'm George. It's my personality. I am my personality.